we go. Welcome everybody to the first piece of advice. This is a series of events that we are going to start holding here at the Carter School that is mainly interested in featuring our alumni and understanding what their experiences have been like, especially since leaving the Carter School, or for a lot of people, the School for Conflict Analysis and Resolution. escar is an acronym that's still very much on people's hearts, and we understand that. And to learn from you, and to also create networking opportunities for our current students so that we can really understand ourselves in the bigger community that we have. One of the interesting things about this pandemic is that we have so much shifted onto this online presence. And while there have been numerous, setbacks to that, we also need to seize the opportunity to connect with people around the world. And in this case, that's very much happening. And to try to reconnect with each other and be aware that the Carter School is very big, and that that even after graduation, we can be partners with each other, and that your faculty and your staff here very much care about what happens to you and where you're going. And we want to be in the loop, and we want to learn from you, because this has never been a one-way street. We want to learn from our students and their experiences as they come into all the kind of expertise that they have. So today marks the first in this new series, and the way that we'll run this today is I'm going to facilitate. My name is Tehama Lopez Bunyasi. I'm an associate professor here at the Carter School. We're going to have a panel discussion until about 2:45. The next 15 minutes after that will be open to Q&A for everyone in attendance. And then at 3 o'clock, we're going to really change this into a networking event to the best of our ability, and work the room, so to speak, and people can share information with each other and learn about, how can I learn about the footsteps that you took, and can I follow in them? And so I would like to thank our panelists and to introduce them, and then for us to get going. And I would like to make a co-host here out of Tim. Thank you so much for being here, everybody. Okay, so first, I would like to introduce Ashley Wright. She's the Director of Artificial Intelligence Research and Ethics at Magnus Partners. Ashley graduated from the Carter School in 2015 with her bachelor's in International Conflict Analysis and Resolution. She has over a decade of experience in the technology industry, performing machine learning research, artificial intelligence research, NLP research, project management, cybersecurity policy, risk assessment, and insider threat detection roles for technology companies ranging from Bumble to McKinsey. She's a certified information privacy professional for Europe. Ashley attended the History, Politics, and Society program at the University of Oxford during her undergraduate degree at George Mason, and is currently in the process of completing a Master's of Science in Data and Society at the London School of Economics. And political science, I shouldn't say LSE, because I think in my mind it's LSE, and it also has more, and political science. Okay, when she's not studying or working, Ashley enjoys traveling, reading, practicing yoga, trying new restaurants, and enthusiastically advocating for the use of the Oxford comma. Thank you so much for being here, Ashley. Next, we have Elana Sokol, and she is a Peace Engineering Fellow and Change Management Consultant. She's currently a Ph.D. student here at the Carter School, and she is a certified mediator, and she holds a BA from George Mason University in conflict analysis and resolution, and her master's from Columbia University in negotiation and conflict resolution. She has held several positions in startup techs, and is interested in the intersection of tech, ethics, and policy. For her doctoral research, she's focusing currently on digital diplomacy, data governance, and smart city development, which I'm glad I got to learn a lot more from her about. And then our third panelist is Tim Spiegel, who's Manager of Technical Account Management. And he graduated from the Carter School in 2018. He has a BA in Conflict Analysis and Resolution. He is currently managing a team of young professionals in the experience management XM software industry. Tim and his team provide, and you're going to have to clarify this for me later. Is it SaaS consulting? All right, SaaS
Yes.
consulting. Yay! To Fortune 500 companies across the globe, specializing in software implementation, strategy, training, and analysis. Tim refers to the knowledge he gained with the Carter School as critical to understanding others and driving organizational change. And so again, I'd like to just welcome you all and thank you so much for being here and kicking off this series for us. So my first question to you is, I am not well known for being a sophisticate when it comes to technology. All of my either current students, current affiliates, or past students understand this, but I am really interested in understanding the potential of technology to be a force for good in the world. And so I'm just gonna start us off by saying, can you describe in layman and laywoman's terms, what it is that you do for work or have done most recently? And so I don't know who I should kick this over to first, but let me go to Elana. How about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently doing two things. I'm a pizza engineering fellow with the Carter School. So we're working on humanitarian tech and different digital data governance activities. In layman's term, what is that? It's a good question. We're still defining a lot of these terms as we go, to be honest. But a lot of it is around processes and improvement, as well as diplomacy and governance at a high level with a specific focus on the cyberspace. And then during my day job, I'm also a consultant, change management, doing leadership development work in the cyber security space. So we look at different processes we can improve or transform, how we can make people engaged with their work as well as with their culture. So twofold is that in the tech space, but people are in the tech space. So how do we work with people to make these technologies more human, like less robotic?
Okay. I think
in short, it changes every time I explain this, to be honest. So it'll change next time too.
Okay, that's great. I'm here for it. Thank you so much. How about from Tim?
Awesome. Yeah, in short, I'm a manager for our business consulting team at Qualtrics using our experience management software. So we mentioned the SaaS acronym earlier, SaaS. It's software as a service. So the team that I lead is, and sort of where my background in is as well, is, leading a team that is focused on implementing software with our customers. It's pretty complex software at the end of the day, so it involves a lot of training customers, really understanding their business needs as well, and strategizing around how to use our software to really answer their business questions, but also meet their, enterprise goals. So depending on what those things might be, there's a lot of change management that comes into play. There's a lot of, problem solving with the best of our abilities and the resources that we have. We mentioned in the sort of summary a moment ago, I definitely refer to the education that I received through the Carter School to really be pivotal in how I can and how I encourage others to really understand a problem through and through, and acknowledge that, there's not necessarily just the problem in front of you to solve, but underlying things that make us successful in the long term. So a lot of my team is young, sort of college hire professionals, and that's who I get to work with and lead on our team day to day.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Tim. We're going to get a lot more into the kind of, what the Carter School did for kind of informing your work. And so I'm glad you're already kind of eager to get to that. And then Ashley, what is it that you've been doing for work?
So when I am working, I work for an investment banking startup at the moment. I mostly evaluate the artificial intelligence and cybersecurity products of companies before the company is brought to market to be sold. So I kind of do due diligence on any kind of AI or cybersecurity products that we bring to market. And I have been doing cybersecurity work for about 13 years, doing everything you said before, a wide variety of things. So yeah, and then I am doing my master's degree at the LSE, and I will be focusing my research on general artificial intelligence and potential guidelines and policy that will come along with that. So that is what I do.
Okay, thank you so much. I feel like you guys are holding my hand and walking me through this as we go. So thank you very much. If we can go back in time a little bit, what brought you to Mason? What brought you to the Carter School or then escar to begin with? Ashley, do you?
Yeah, I'll go first. So when I was 18, I wanted to work in the Foreign Service for the State Department, and George Mason has a very strong relationship with the State Department, which I had heard from multiple people. So I was very interested in finding a way to kind of incorporate my interest in political science and psychology. escar did both of those things admirably, and combine that with a useful degree to get my foot in the door with the State Department. So that's what first brought me to escar.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Elana.
Yeah, so I was always interested in the business space and organizational development. So the Carter School offered a really great foundation. At every single level within the business space, conflict resolution is there and needed. And many senior leaders list this as a top soft skill, as well as just a skill that can always be improved over time. So I knew this was a space I wanted to be involved in, and the Carter School just excelled in that space.
That's great to hear. Thank you. Tim.
I could probably draw a line between Elana and Ashley, but I definitely came to George Mason with an interest in sort of the psychology space. I definitely wanted to, help others, and I knew the programs that we had. I actually didn't know about the Carter School at the time, but was interested in the location and the sort of government-based opportunities that were there. But throughout my time in the Carter School and really just throughout my time with George Mason, I became a little bit more interested in the business end of things, and I stuck with my major in sort of escar at the time as my kind of guiding thread through that, and then supplemented it with a diverse range of other courses that I think have kind of made me a pretty well-rounded young professional, I suppose.
Okay, so I'm hearing a lot of like you saw Mason as a hub of something. There were interests that you had, some of them that preceded an interest in Carter School explicitly, and then things that kind of led you, here, right? So that's you entering. When you left the Carter School, how did you navigate the job search? Because sometimes, right, the jobs like the job ads are very clear and maybe you go right for it, but maybe sometimes it's not such a straight line. What was it like for you? Tim.
Yeah, I had an experience. I struggled a little bit there early on, but towards my time of graduating, I actually had a peer in the organization that got a job offer and then rejected it. She found something else. So in my instance, I was actually able to reach out to that recruiter directly and said like, hey, I know that you have an offering that you're giving to someone that is a peer of mine, and I think we have similar skills. And that's how I actually secured my first job as a government contractor with the Department of Commerce, working for the contractor in HR. And that quickly turned into my sort of consulting career that I now have with another transition a little bit further down the line there. But very interpersonal based. I was able to really make connections there based on who I met through the program. And I could mention a couple other instances that have had similar experiences. So definitely kind of sticking with the people that you meet and, building those relationships, I think are absolutely critical to making those next steps forward in your career.
Well, it sounds like you really seized an opportunity that it was there. You went right after it. So is that how you see it?
Absolutely. In fact, I'd have to say some of it is luck as well. Another step down the line, I had an old professor of mine reach out to me saying that his daughter's company were looking to expand. My professor put me in contact with his daughter, and now I work with his daughter in the company that I'm now at and have been for I'm in my 4th year here now, And last year we were acquired by another company. So a lot of different change management things that we'll get into, I'm sure, later in this conversation. But very much my career has been, the pivots have been based on interpersonal connections. So it's something that I'm both interested in and proud of.
That's interesting to me too. Elana, how'd you navigate the job search after leaving Carter School?
Mine is also interpersonal based. I very much was still interested in academia after graduating from the Carter School, and with support from professors, including yourself, I decided to pursue some of the research topics I was still interested in and do research in Manhattan with some companies that were focusing on machine learning and augmented reality, artificial intelligence, the whole, acronym alphabet soup kind of space of technology. And then came back here to continue doing some of that research. But the interpersonal connections was, on LinkedIn, just seeing what people are doing and connecting, learning more, reaching out and just saying like, hey, like, is there space to connect and, get involved? So not really a conventional job posting per se, but just, looking for ways to get involved and learn more. So that's kind of been my thread there. And then I've landed currently in the cybersecurity space. So always room for growth and learning, and just people being mentors in that space has helped me find jobs and, opportunities.
Yeah. So in the case of LinkedIn, it seems like a really important technology, right? Like kind of underline that is making it possible for people to connect in ways that if you didn't know them prior, it doesn't take too much, right? To get to build at least one connection and maybe go from there to make it more substantial, right?
I know this is jumping the gun just a little, but on LinkedIn, you can see when people are from your school at other companies. That's kind of an easy way to connect, as well as just like cold calling, not cold calling, but like cold messaging. As a student, people are more interested in connecting with you. So I found that's really easy. Just say, hey, I'm a student, I'm interested in learning more. People are really open to just chatting on LinkedIn.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Ashley, how about you?
Mine was also very interpersonally based. So I actually worked throughout my high school and my undergraduate degree. So I was lucky enough to just move into a full-time rather than a part-time position when I graduated from the Carter School. But that CEO and I really connected in the way that he taught and I learned, and he was very patient. And so he actually became my professional mentor, and we have worked at 6 companies together over the years. So he really opened a lot of doors for me and helped me learn a lot about this space, because I kind of fell into technology by accident during my undergraduate degree by taking an executive assistant position, actually, when I was 19 at a government contracting startup in Reston. So because it was a small company, you do a lot of things and you wear a lot of hats. So he was able to teach me a lot of different things about what we did. And by the time that I left that company, I was an analyst. So it kind of kickstarted my career. And then on another note about networking and connection, the way that I got my job at Bumble was I matched with Whitney Wolf on Bumble on the friend finding mode. And yeah, and so just connecting with her led to my job at Bumble. So I think that it's all about interpersonal connection and networking. So always say yes to opportunities, meet as many people as you can, reach out to as many people as you can. As Elana said, I get messages all the time from people who are just starting out in the industry on LinkedIn, or students, and they say, can I have 10 minutes and can I just talk to you? And I'm always open to that. Especially young women, more young women in tech, especially women of color. I'm a huge advocate of that. So I help as much as I can.
That's awesome. I love this story. And I think you've given us really good detail about, some people, like how you said you accidentally kind of fell into it and you become super familiar with all the different tasks at hand. And that's just, I love that story. Okay, this is a really meaty question, at least in my opinion, it's a meaty question, and it's a 2-parter. So why should people in the fields of peacemaking and conflict resolution be thinking about getting involved with technology, like in that professional way? And then conversely, how can fields of technology benefit from having people with backgrounds in peacemaking, conflict analysis and resolution, and like why should these things come together, right? Because not a lot of people, and maybe more and more people, right, are starting to think about, oh, tech and peacemaking, but like, what is, from your points of view, why can these benefit one another? Who wants to go first on that one? It is kind of a bigger question. Tim, how about you?
I was going to nominate Elana, but I'll go.
Where you were at.
But yeah, I think, you know, one of the ways that technology really plays into kind of the future of, you know, conflict analysis and action is that one, you know, of course, technology is everywhere and that's only kind of increasing. It's certainly not going away, but it really scales. I think that's something that we in my organization spend a lot of effort on, is making sure that you know, we're able to take big actions based on the conflict or the opportunities that we find. And technology is going to really, you know, empower actors to have a broader impact across the, you know, in my case, maybe organizations, but in many other cases, you know, maybe with smaller groups, but really worldwide impact. So I think that's, you know, certainly one of the places that those really contribute well to one another. And the sort of second part there with how people with the sort of peacemaking background really fit into that picture is that, let me think about this for a moment, sort of, you know, in my experience,
I can jump in there if you want to.
Yeah,
tag
go
team
ahead,
it.
go ahead and hop in. We'll circle back.
So I was thinking about the phrase "do no harm." It's something we teach in the undergrad program in all levels of the program. And in the tech space, you know, it doesn't come naturally, the do no harm concept. So as peace builders, I feel it's kind of our responsibility to come in and say, like, who are the stakeholders being, you know, who's involved, who is this for, you know, what's the impact of this technology, and have we considered all the different elements of it? And I think those questions aren't always thought of until the end product or project is developed. And that can be really dangerous in society, right? We have a lot of, you know, technology that's biased, or, you know, different credit scoring systems, and the implications are hurting different sectors of society. So I think bringing the peace builders involved in these usually very tech focused, like let's find our end product, is really important in the beginning stages, so we can kind of prevent or mitigate some of these harms in society. And I think there's a bigger call to action for that too. I follow a lot of tech groups online, mostly LinkedIn, great network place, and they want the conflict resolution people involved. They have the engineering and the coding background. They don't have the peace building background. So I think the two really complement each other really well.
Thank you. Ashley, from your perspective, what do you think?
So I think that there is a lot of overlap, actually. So first of all, technology is ubiquitous. It's enmeshing itself in every aspect of our lives. So being familiar with tech and being able to use and navigate it is really important in any profession. It can also be used as a really powerful force for good, including in conflict resolution. It gives us access to vast swaths of data that we would not otherwise have access to. And it connects us with other practitioners around the world who we might not be able to encounter in any other way. Also, conflict, as we've seen with the Ukraine-Russia situation, is international because the world is incredibly interconnected at this point because of globalization. So using tech in those conflict situations is unavoidable. Also, cybersecurity is a form of conflict. So it's virtual and it's not, you know, no one's pointing weapons, actual tangible weapons at each other, but virtual weapons are being pointed. So I think that bringing peacemakers or people with a peacemaking background into the cyberspace is also important and in demand.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Does anybody else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, just kind of building on that last point, and to a lot of what Elana said. I was trying not to jump the gun on some things that I think will come up later, but really, I think one of the things that characterized this school of thought and educational background that's different from some other places, is really being able to see that 360-degree view of what a conflict is from start to finish in a way that, I think some other people might not have that full scope. And that makes sure that when we, as, peacemakers and analysts and the other roles that might, be in our futures and past and whatnot, we can really understand it up front, so that we make sure that we're not necessarily just addressing symptoms of conflict, but getting to the root cause and being able to make a change that's going to be long lasting and impactful. So I think I guess all three of us kind of touched on that some, but really looking at it from a big picture, I think, is one of the significant things that people with this background really bring to the table.
Thank you. When you think about your professional lives, and even if you think about your personal lives as well, when a kind of project or an accomplishment that you have from your personal or professional life, can you recognize times where you are using the skills or the knowledge that you have gained by learning in the Carter School, that being part of the Carter School community? Is there something that's like fully translated, but how can you illustrate connections for us from your experiences here as alum?
So this one is not as much tech related, but it's just a general, like, this has been a really useful skill set and learning from the program, is mapping stakeholders, mapping conflicts. It's really translated into my personal change management and consulting work, to understand user needs, stakeholder engagement kind of conflicts. How do we bring in different parties, facilitate conversations, mediate interpersonal conflicts as well. Mm-hmm. And just like that kind of mapping that we do over larger macro conflicts translates still into businesses as well. There's so many kind of smaller conflicts that happen day to day that, if go unaddressed, can become a bigger issue. So kind of transferable skills.
Yes. Thank you. Who wants to go next?
I will go. So I think that I have taken a lot of skills from the Carter School and applied them both personally and professionally. So especially the interpersonal conflict courses have been so useful on focusing on the psychological factors of conflict. And that has helped me navigate workplace conflict that could be potentially explosive and kind of diffuse it and preserve my professional relationships at the same time. The international worldview and awareness of conflict issues in different countries has come in so handy, both in my cybersecurity work, my work with colleagues around the world, and building relationships with international clients. Also in my personal life, I did the digital nomad thing for about 4 years straight. And so that international awareness and policy background in the diplomacy courses that I took at Mason allowed me to kind of predict and think ahead about what policies countries might implement, which came in really handy during the pandemic when I had to choose whether to move or to stay when borders were closing all the time. So that was really useful. Also, the research skills that I honed during my time at the Carter School have come in really handy, both for my graduate program now and for research-based reporting that I've had to do professionally. Also still keep in touch with some of my colleagues that I went to the Carter School with. So it's benefited me a lot, both personally and professionally.
I love that. Tim.
Yeah, kind of thinking about some of the things that come to mind with that question. I always sort of reference just the idea of really being able to shift your perspectives to how others are feeling. And I think I was exposed to a lot of that through the Carter School. I haven't touched on it too much, but my company works in experience management. So we work with like feedback, call recordings, reviews online, places where people are expressing their opinions and experiences. And it is absolutely critical as an analyst and really as a manager as well to be able to understand the opinions of others in the situation that they're in, and to a certain extent be able to, empathize with that and understand that full picture that we've mentioned a couple of times now. But sort of in addition to that, one other thing that comes to mind, I think theory-wise, and I hope I'm not misremembering some of the lessons of this, but really the idea of like relative deprivation, I think, comes to mind in terms of like, how people see themselves really in just defining fairness in a lot of places. I, of course, am a manager now, but with my company being purchased last year, we're still going through a less than smooth acquisition to a much larger company, and there are hiccups and things might be going like really well, but it still can feel like you're getting beat down some days just because of the perceptions that people are having. And at the end of the day, I find myself thinking this probably weekly at least, that perception is reality, and understanding how people feel is sometimes even more important than the actual like underlying facts of some of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Are there any other thoughts on this about lessons, things that you learned here that come to mind about how you've used them at different times in your career or in your life? I know you all have spoken to this already. How about this? Can you tell us a favorite memory of your time at the Carter School? Maybe it happened in a class, maybe it was a project, maybe it was a relationship with another student or a faculty member that, meant something to you in a particular way. Maybe there was an event that was held.
I have a couple that I could think of. So I'll mention one and maybe we can circle back to me if we have time. But there's one activity that I know that we did at one point that really sticks in my mind because it was an interesting sort of social experiment at the time. But then some follow-up stuff that I'll get to in a second come up. But at one point we had this activity to go onto, I think, a metro car, subway. And we were sort of watching how other people interact with one another. Who sits next to who? Does everyone spread out? Are they standing? Who's the last person to have someone sit next to them? Really just observing how people interact with one another as they're going about their day-to-day. I loved that activity, but it was also really interesting that I was one day, years later, on the subway, and I saw someone with a notebook, and I was like talking to my friend who's a few seats away from me. So I was just pretty much yelling. I was speaking very loud. I was like, hey, there was this one time I was doing this thing, like writing down stuff. And this other woman on the car looks up at me and just says, that's exactly what I'm doing right now. And she was like taking notes on all of us as well. So I imagine that I ruined her entire analysis by calling.
You called her out right there.
Absolutely.
I know you are.
It was fun. I just love that sort of people watching, sort of kind of analyzing the world around you as it stands. And then of course I have that additional experience with it. But that was definitely something that sticks out. And I always think about it when I'm on the metro.
Ashley, how about you?
I can't necessarily think of one specific memory, but my favorite thing about the entirety of my experience at the Carter School was how lively the discussions were when we were in class and how personal they got. I think that we all learned a lot about each other, about ourselves, through the lens of the theories and concepts and situations that we were discussing. I felt like it was a very safe space, which was kind of a rare thing on a huge campus like Mason's. It felt very intimate, and we discussed a lot of very sensitive issues and topics, and I can never get over how non-adversarial those conversations were. Even if we were having a lively debate, no one went after anybody else or was mean or anything like that. So those spaces and those discussions really stick out in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that to be even held on to memories of that, even if in our present day, in our situations, we don't experience it or we don't see it, you know, before us on television, especially, it's really something to be like, I know it's possible, right? Elana, how about you?
Yeah, I'll just say, Tim, that metro story is still very funny to me. I was a part of that. I was on the metro with him for that exercise. He got way more out of it than I did. But also to what Ashley said about kind of having that space to connect with other people that, you know, have experienced different conflicts or they're researching different conflicts and having those conversations. I thought that was some of the best parts of my Carter School experience. And still to this day, people from the program, I feel very comfortable having those conversations with, knowing we have a similar kind of educational background and common, you know, ground rules to have, you know, respectful dialogues and just listen to other perspectives. And I think that's really powerful too. Like in this day and age, as you were saying, to be able to, you know, leave your comfort zone and really expand your own perspective and thinking to speak with different people from different subject matter expert spaces. And then secondly, or thirdly, I guess I'll say, so I'm going to Tim's wedding later this year. So I guess that's like kind of cool that, you know, connections from the Carter School all those years ago kind of still translate to today.
She's not just coming, she's in the wedding party.
Yeah.
That's exciting. That's lovely. And congratulations. We are, you know, there's always growth in schools and in universities, and Mason is certainly no exception. Like as I told you at the beginning, we have construction happening like right over here to my right. And I'm just wondering, you know, when you think about George Mason, you think about our school, what kind of things do you want for our institution? Knowing what you know now and the experiences, and also having some real sense of the job markets that you're in. Is there anything that you would say, yeah, I'd like to see more concentration here, or for people to you know, be more energized, or just to put more attention on a certain type of sense of skills or events or ways of relating to each other, or, you know, what can you share with us about like what we should be thinking about over here?
I can hop in just because sort of in my role that I've been in for 6 or 7 months now as sort of the manager of the consultant role that I was previously, I'm now involved in sort of that hiring side of the same thing. And one of the pieces of advice I was hoping to mention was just really that staying in touch and connecting with people point, but I think we've probably commented on that enough this afternoon. But in addition to that, one of the things that I definitely like to kind of focus on, and I like when I see it in other people, and I think it really applies to this degree, but it's really, you know the value of the experiences like the ones that we've mentioned today and how you can tie that to other things. I think, you know, sometimes it might be easy to say like, oh, you know, I have this, you know, degree in peacemaking, so I know that only applies to like this international level government thing where I need to go do this exact role. And that's just not the case. There's skills that each and every one of us and of you have developed, and the perspectives that you bring are going to be incredibly valuable to a lot more organizations than I think I realized at the time. So just really being able to acknowledge that sort of intrinsically, but really articulate it as well is a skill that's certainly worth building and establishing if you don't already have it.
Yeah, thank you. How about you, Ashley?
So to kind of build on what Tim said, I think that while the Carter School is already very multidisciplinary, I think that maybe there could be some space for taking the skills, articulating the skills that you learn in the Carter School and showing examples concretely of how you could apply them in other fields, because there is a kind of common perception that if you don't see it, you can't be it. So maybe you could say, you could take this one skill that you have that you don't think is applicable to working in technology like we all do at all, but really it will serve you really well in any of these particular roles. So that could be something that the escar school could give some thought to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, putting it just in plain terms, giving examples, case study, so to speak, right? Yeah, that's a great idea. Elana, how about you?
Yeah, so I would say when I first joined the job market or was kind of searching, I thought I was going to like kind of solve the world a little bit. Like in the peace building, conflict resolution space, like you're going to like change the world. And those entry level jobs don't quite do that. You're contributing to a larger organization that maybe has similar values or purpose that you want to contribute to, but you're not the one just changing the world. You're supporting those initiatives. So I think highlighting some of those more foundational skills is really great in resumes, like program project management, basic Excel skills, like stuff like that is really important because those are kind of, as Ashley were saying, the I don't want to say hard skills, but more concrete things that we can show companies and case studies or business examples of things we're going to contribute day to day. And then overall, overarching as you grow within an organization, we then bring those bigger picture things we want to contribute to the world. But that was definitely, it took a little bit of, thought process for me to think through, like, how do I contribute to that bigger picture and do something at an entry level to start with? So definitely trying to do a little bit of word conversion. A lot of the things we've been taught in the program definitely convert to the business world or the tech world, but figuring out how those words convert and what the right matches, if they're using AI to like look through resumes, takes a little bit of time. So kind of, looking at other people who have got those jobs you want and seeing how they've converted those words to make it fit, I think would be pretty helpful.
That's interesting. Okay, I have one more question before we open up to Q&A. So this is a piece of advice, but any more pieces, i.e. of advice, and maybe one of the things I might want to pull out from you, Elana, is when you just talked about AI being used to look at resumes. Now, I only know anything about this because I've been reading about Ruha Benjamin and her great research. But maybe some other people don't. I certainly didn't know that prior to reading a couple of books. So if you could think about pieces of advice for our current students, but if I could draw that out of you right now, Elana, like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, so if anyone here has ever spoken to me before, I love to overshare resources. And I have a couple of links I'll throw in the chat of like job boards and like, if you use Zotero for citations, they're great citations on these topics, but these are folks in the field that are starting to think about, how does AI and conflict resolution converge? And what do these terms even mean in non-technical terms? Because I'm certainly not a technical person when it comes to AI. I just like to think I am. Then I meet the actual AI experts. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know what you're talking about. But I'll throw those in the chat briefly.
Okay, thank you. But it's basically right that, tell me if I'm wrong, but there is an idea that artificial intelligence can sometimes do better or can do more efficiently than people to skim through. And I already see a good wince, and I'm glad I saw that in you, Ashley. But to review, right, documents like resumes, and with the promise, right, that these things will be less biased.
I would say in our field, it's actually not great for us as conflict resolution folks. Like those AI systems, like actually, I think hurt us because they don't understand or convert our knowledge to what it could be in the business world. They don't translate it. So it's input, output, which is why I said, like, if you can find someone who has the job you want, try to look at the language they've used, because you may have the same skill set, they're just using different language.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Ashley, I was just looking at your face during all of this. Is there anything you want to add to that, or I don't know?
Well, the whole idea of that machines might be able to do things better than people. They can for many things, but there is going to be, especially with hiring and that sort of thing, a lot of elements of bias, because I don't want to talk too much about this because it would take up the entire time that we have left. But basically, AI is trained on training data. So a lot of the time that training data, especially if it's taken, hopefully, from a real world source, is going to contain a lot of dirty data, which means that it hasn't been cleaned of everything that you would necessarily want to have the AI disregard when you're training it. And it's also going to reflect any kind of historical bias that the hiring managers or whoever has instilled into that training data set. So it's essentially going to perpetuate any problems that are already present, which a lot of the time can be racism, sexism, that sort of thing. They're also not going to be intersectional when they are looking at these candidates. And so usually it's only going, if you do have a data set that has been cleaned and tagged in a way that would eliminate most of the bias, because it's really hard to, because of proxy data and all sorts of other technical things I won't go into, it's really hard to completely eliminate that. It's probably only going to parse for one thing. So it might only parse for making sure that the data set is as not racist as possible, but not necessarily making sure that it's not going to discriminate doubly against Black women, for instance. So it's yeah, I have many thoughts on this.
And we can discuss more of these even a little bit later, maybe in Q&A. Any last thoughts before we open up to Q&A though?
Yeah, just kind of building on that, from the resume perspective, I think, my experience is going through them sort of one by one, although that might be changing in the future with like my company acquisition. But, our company at its core has been text analytics, and we do have enrichments that we use that are AI and machine learning based, probably a few other AI types and whatnot. But in my experience, they are imperfect, to Ashley's point. And, I find myself in the delivery part of our business really focused on trying to make sure that our customers understand, how to use this as really, to one of those first points I mentioned today was the scalability of it. You have the option to use technology to use a large amount of data to maybe point you in the right direction, even if it's not going to be that, end all be all solution at the end of the day. So it scales at the loss of maybe some precision, and different resources and AI types have different pros and cons there, but that's, certainly one of the trade-offs that does cause conflict in the sort of adoption stages and, how people interact and understand it too. So it takes a little bit of the human element out of it, but the downside is that it takes a little bit of the human element out of it.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's open it up to Q&A. Let's see here. Either you can use your hands, I can see everyone now, or maybe you have a question that you want to put in the chat. Celia, do you want to, is it Celia or Celia?
It's Celia. I do live in Miami, but I'm from Virginia, so
okay, all right.
Pronunciation is not Spanish.
Okay.
So I actually, sorry, my camera isn't on. This popped up and I was like, oh wow, this is so cool. And so I hopped in last minute. But I have a friend who went to the escar program and she got a position at a large social media company. And she highly encouraged me to apply, even though I have zero tech experience, because she said that everything is so new that a lot of people don't have experience. And I was wondering if you guys felt that that was, is that how you guys see the tech space in terms of conflict resolution? And that's my question.
Okay, who wants to take that? Thank you.
You mind if I hop in? Yeah, I alluded to it earlier, but a lot of the people that I hire tend to be young professionals. A lot of them are either college hires or near that. But, in my instance, I can teach you to be an analyst. I can teach you our best practices of how to do things. What's really difficult to teach and to train on, and the things that I look for when hiring people, are the soft skills, the intuition to be able to really understand. I'll just leave it at stuff. But those soft skills and really being able to show, the drive or your ability to speak to complex things clearly are all skills that oftentimes maybe people with analytical backgrounds might not necessarily have themselves. So at the end of the day, I'm looking for people that I can train. They're hungry to learn, and they would be, good people to really build up those other hard skills that I would need as someone more tenured in the role.
Thank you. Anybody else want to address that? Okay. How about Matthew?
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Cool. So as someone who's really interested in getting into peace tech, but comes more so from the peace, like in conflict resolution side of it, what do you think was the most important non-conflict resolution skill you learned that helped you get into the tech space?
Good question. Who wants to take that?
Okay, so one of the big things, to Tim's point, you're looking for those soft skills. So one of those is presentation, and in the hiring and interviewing process, presenting yourself and selling yourself is really, really important. And interviewing well is maybe one of the most important skills that you can enter the job market with. So I think that learning to articulate your thoughts and your skills, like you may or may not do it when you're presenting a concept or an argument for your undergraduate degree, might be really helpful when you're looking for a job.
Yeah, that's great. Anybody else? Elana, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I feel like I've shared this before, but LinkedIn, like I don't want to like hit it over the head, but like I've seen a lot of coalition building on LinkedIn, like people that didn't know each other starting to tag each other, and you're following those threads and staying active on it. And then you get involved in those groups or reach out, and the next thing you know, you're involved in like, big organizations launching, policies or different tech ethics initiatives. And you don't have to have the hard skills to be involved in that. So I think just kind of staying active in that space is really important, and collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
Also cold calling. I know that sounds really scary for people, but it definitely made a difference in my own career. Just reaching out to groups I thought I wanted to get involved in. And they're usually just surprised to have anyone reach out.
Yeah. So there's like this kind of like, putting yourself out there. So there's the presentation, which can be sometimes a more formal, like maybe a little bit rehearsed, maybe, figuring out between being authentic and rehearsed. And then putting yourself out there, and just kind of, can be a really intimidating thing to do. But we've talked so much about soft skills, and particularly people who have been, swimming in this space of the Carter School, that to draw as best as you can from those kind of skills in reaching out, in, thinking about how organizations grow, and, can you offer, can I be helpful to this organization, or can I attend this? Can I share something on your behalf? That could be really helpful. Shakila, I see your hand, and then John, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much to the folks who put this together, and to our panelists for taking the time to talk to us a little bit about this. So my connection to the Carter School, actually, you know what? I have a comment, then a question. So first, I want to second like cold emailing or calling or reaching out to people. You would actually be surprised at the number of people who are willing to talk to you if you just say, hey, I want to do what you do. Can I, get half an hour to learn about your career journey? I have hopped on calls, like phone calls or Zoom calls with at least 6 people since I've started my search. So I highly recommend just reaching out to people. The worst that can happen is they tell you no. Well, that's the second worst thing that can happen. The worst that can happen is that they don't respond at all. And then, you know, you find the next person and you keep doing it. So I highly recommend that. That's the comment. Question. I am trying to transition. So we're talking about being a student and going into tech. I am technically currently a student. I'm one of the PhD students here at the Carter School, but I am also a working professional who has been working in education since 2014. I am trying to pivot to diversity and inclusion work in the tech space. And I feel highly qualified, but I feel like no one is reading my resume. I am curious as to, and I know the answer is networking, but maybe you have some specifics. I am curious as to how to get people to read my resume. I know if they read the resume, they're gonna call me for an interview, and I won't mess that up. But how can I get my resume in front of the right people?
Great question.
I can speak to this one. So the groups, the links that I shared, I would look at who's publishing some of those articles or who's leading the conversation and connect with them specifically on LinkedIn and see if they know of opportunities. One of the groups specifically has a job board, and the focus is a lot on D&I and education. So I think kind of following those threads, which I know you said networking you're already doing, and it's a tough process for sure. But following those threads and seeing where those people are involved might help, and they might also know of connections.
I like that. Who's leading the conversation? That's so important for so many things. Any other thoughts for Shakila?
I don't know that it directly ties to that, but you know, without really seeing your resume, I've had this on the back of my mind for the last couple of questions, so I figured it's about time that I mention it. But really, you know, one of the questions not that long ago is like, what hard skills to add on there? I know I mentioned a professor recommended me to his daughter, and that's how I kind of got to the company that I'm at. One of the things that I think made me stand out to that professor is that he was, you know, teaching a 1-credit sort of career readiness course. And I recommended to him that he includes part of his class to focus on what hard skills or what certifications or what something in the career path would separate you from your peers. You know, I'd love to say that saying on a resume that, and I fully believe that you have other qualifications as well, but for other people, you know, saying that you're a go-getter without having proof behind that is tough to really genuinely set yourself apart. So there's the option to try to figure out exactly what is it that's going to separate you and make sure that that is sort of front and center. The degree is a big part. The education's certainly a big part, but there's other pieces to that puzzle that I think are all too often, you know, not highlighted, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Let's see, any other feedback for Shakila? And maybe we can continue this in a little bit. Thank you. John has his hand up. Hi, John. Okay, how about Alejandra?
This was a check. I should check my audio.
Okay. Okay, we're with you now.
We gotcha.
Okay, go ahead, John. Okay. John, I believe that we can make this happen. But in the meantime, let's go to Alejandra.
Hello, are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you guys so much for organizing this. One of my questions was, Tim, as you were speaking, and as Shakila was speaking too, I feel like on the opposite end. So I'm a senior and I'm about to graduate in May. And I've gained like so many skills outside of the class. When COVID happened, I really took advantage of my free time and I started learning how to code and I got really good at Python. And then after that, I asked some friends, like, I was a peace building fellow, and I said, this is a project that I worked on. I'd love to do like, put this into like some sort of data collection method. I don't know how to do that. Could you help me with that? And so my friend helped me with that. And after that, I said to myself, okay, I need to learn how to do this because I can't have my friends doing this for me all the time. And I feel like I have all these hard skills and I just don't know how to put them on a resume. But like, I just slap them on there and I'm like, okay, like elementary level understanding of R and of Python, but like I've never put it into practice. And so do you guys possibly have any recommendations as like, I don't know, certifications I could get, or I don't know, how common is it maybe that people put like a little highlight section just saying like, these are side things that I do outside of the classroom or like my work experience?
That's a great concrete question. Anybody thoughts for her?
I would definitely put that on your resume as a kind of like highlight or like other skills, especially if you are interested in becoming a developer, because them not having to teach you those very, very basics is going to be really great for them. If you come in entry level and you show a concrete understanding of kind of the elementary basics of that, a lot of companies hopefully will be willing to teach you whatever else they need you to know. But it's invaluable to have those skills on your resume, because to Elana's point, if they are using an AI to parse their resumes, you need to have Python on there so the AI can flag you up to the hiring manager and you can go from there. Also, in your cover letter, mention that kind of to near the top of your cover letter, because a lot of the time hiring managers are skimming. So they will look for keywords as they scan through your cover letter. So if you put that towards the top and make sure that you put your most important skills and most relevant skills to the job listing towards the top of your cover letter, and make sure to separate them out by paragraph, because when your eye encounters a big block of text, your brain is like, no, I don't want to read this. So if you separate it out and make sure there's white space complementing the factors that you want to highlight, that's going to really help.
Yeah, just really building on that, I think it's great to see sort of the diversity in experience that you have, even if it just shows that you have an interest or an elementary understanding of something. It shows that you stretched beyond what is just sort of handed to you based on like a core curriculum. And then, I have a couple extra gen ed classes or, no other activities outside of that. I think it shows an interest in that. And that's something that would separate you from someone else that doesn't have that level of at least exposure. Realistically, in my role, I'm consulting using our software. So like you get to the job in my instance, and you learn our software, and maybe, we find ourselves coding every once in a while if you have someone on the team that wants to do that to try to solve for a complex issue. We might use Excel a lot, to Elana's earlier point, but really having anything on paper to say that like, hey, I'm trying to have that impact. I have something that says that I'm not just sending my resume over to you, but I'm really interested in this space and I have something to prove for it, even if it's just, the way that you did your like capstone project or something like that. In fact, my capstone project with the school used text analysis almost just by chance. And now that's what my company does. So I think that was helpful when I was interviewing, and I had no significant experience there, but I turned it into like an infographic, and now that's what I do like a lot of the time.
Great. Use the infographic. How did you use that?
Just data visualization, big picture. So I took a bunch of text data from social media. I think my capstone was related to how politicians refer to potentially domestic terrorism like events based on if they're perpetrated by citizens of the United States or non-citizens. And at the end of the day, I was able to put that into some fancy looking flyers. And I think that did me well, when I pulled it out in my interview a year later.
Okay, so you were like literally using it in an interview.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. John, can we hear from you this time?
Let's try. There always has to be one person that screws this up, right?
No way, you got this.
So I'm the one guy. No, fantastic panel. Thank you very much to all the panelists and the organizers of this. This is a great topic. Shakila and Alejandra, I feel your pain as a seasoned professional. I feel your pain. I'm a Ph.D. graduate of escar and a master's as well. But 30 years working for the Army as a soldier, as an officer, and as a civilian. I spent last year as a fellow with Amazon Web Service. It was my first year in tech. And so this kind of leads to, can I help Shakila and Alejandra a little bit of advice? Referrals are a #1 tool to get connected and get hired. In fact, we were just listening to the Amazon Web Service all hands that happened just before this, and the CEO mentioned that referrals are the #1 way that they are hiring people. Like employee referrals are the #1 way that they're hiring people, and also the best candidates. But also for Alejandra, about the skills and the certs, when you can translate those into accomplishments, like how not that you just have the skills, but that you it becomes a data point of your accomplishments. I sat through a 6-hour loop for Amazon Web Service, and the entire time was about building, giving the interviewers information about the accomplishments that met the leadership principles of Amazon and Amazon Web Service. So translating that Python into some sort of accomplishment will be very helpful. I want to go back, if we can, about the conversation about AI and ML, because one of the things I wish I had as a PhD student, as I scrubbed 30 years of arms control agreements between Russia and the United States, was some of these tools. Last year, one of the projects that I worked on as a fellow, and I continue to help them, is a company called Signal Labs. They do social media analytics, but they have a narrative intelligence tool. And one of the things I was helping them advise on is introducing narrative grammar, which is something that I learned from Sarah Cobb at the Carter School. And how do we inform those tools about very basic fundamentals of what, they, like I said, they have a narrative intelligence platform, but they never heard of narrative grammar. So how to train those tools to do so. But if I had those tools, and I spent a little bit of time using AWS machine learning tools, obviously, if I had those tools as a PhD student or even as a professional, I think I would have had a much easier time in going back and maybe just an alert to where trouble is, where conflict arises, so that I can go back and take a more in-depth human look at things. I wonder what the panel's thought about that. No.
Thanks for the question, John. Let's see, Ashley or Tim, Elana?
Sure. So I have done some NLP research, so natural language processing research. And computers, again, so there are some things that computers are getting good at, but they're not quite there yet. And parsing language is one of those things, because computers have a really hard time understanding context, nuance, sarcasm, colloquialisms, idioms. So you would understand what I mean when I say, oh, I would kill for a sandwich right now. Like, I'm starving, I'm so hungry. But if you put that language into certain NLP tools, it would flag that for violence because I said kill. So depending on how sophisticated the tools are, there might be a need for a human to go back through what the machine has flagged and say, nope, that's okay. No one's gonna get murdered. It's okay.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, that topic that Ashley was just building on is the exact topic that my company that was just purchased really came in from. We're an NLP company, text analytics, using AI in that space. And you're right, it takes a human touch to get a lot of that, and you might be able to tune it to be better through manual efforts. And there's sort of a machine learning based aspect to that as the technology grows. It's certainly not there in the sense that you wouldn't need that human input. But I think this might touch onto John's question a little bit, but sort of after that, maybe it doesn't, but I'll mention it. But our role, or at least the role that I have experience in, one of the things that we look for and that we do in the job is storytelling. So you have all these different numbers, and being able to digest that and turn it into a narrative, whether it's automated or not, being able to communicate those insights to drive those decisions for companies and for other stakeholders in conflict is, one of those skills that I think is certainly worth highlighting as well, because it's not necessarily something that comes naturally, for sure. It takes a lot of effort to be a good narrator, storyteller, a couple of different words we could use there, but it's a skill for sure.
Thank you. Celia. It's so hard for me not to say Celia. Celia. You get our last question, okay?
Okay, yeah. I think my last question was just, what about this field? I know some of you guys said you fell into it. What about the field appeals to you all most?
Great question.
It's constantly changing. It's never the same. Every day you do something different. There's always something new to learn. There's always a new tool to learn, a new machine learning technique to learn. It's very relevant, especially so artificial intelligence and machine learning, and the incorporation of technology, as I said, into every aspect of our lives. And automated decision making and the ethical implications. It's just a huge field, especially if you have a lot of intellectual curiosity and natural drive to kind of learn about these things. I find it endlessly fascinating. So I never get bored.
That's great. Love that. Elana, how about you?
I would say it's definitely changing. So when Tim and I were doing our capstones, I used my capstone to pitch it to a company where I got a research position. So if you do your capstone, you can kind of send it off almost as like a pitch, depending on how you do it. And at the time we were trying to tackle disinformation and misinformation as like this new, like online toxicity. What is that? And now it's like, of course, like these are very common concerns and issues that people have made more mainstream. So the field is definitely changing quite quick. But the capstone, just to push that, can be a really great opportunity. As Tim said, he got a job out of showing his graphics and work from it. It can be really great to kind of jumpstart your interest in the field and use that as a starting point to decide if that's the direction you want to go with the work.
I love that. Thank you. Tim.
Do you mind reminding me what the question was?
Why technology? Why this field you've come to?
Yeah, I definitely like sort of some of what Ashley was mentioning with it growing. It's constantly updating. In my experience in my career so far, I joined our company when we were first really starting to figure out how to do voice analytics. So no one on the team really knew what our best practices was. We didn't really know what impact we could make. We knew that there was something there, but it wasn't really articulated. We didn't have the experience to back it. So because there was all of this ambiguity in the space, there was a lot of opportunities to grow, sort of make a name for yourself in a way, and really define what the future of the industry is going to look like. So it's exciting if you can really be that thought leader on your teams and have your team be the thought leaders in your company and your company be the thought leaders in the industry. It definitely is rewarding because you can make that impact.
That's cool. I love that. Everyone, this has been, for me, this has been really exciting to learn about what you're doing. Again, I'm not a person who feels incredibly familiar with a lot of this work, and you translated a lot of that for me today. And so I'm imagining if I'm on the far end, because I think I am, of like not understanding a lot of things, I'm hoping that like for most of the audience, they really like are soaking in the information that you have and giving them a lot to think about. This is going to, like I said, going to be the first in a series where we're really trying to learn from our alum and to connect them with current students and really make a very concerted effort to build our whole alumni all together so that we're just aware of one another and that we can draw upon one another. And so we're going to shift. I'm going to stop recording in just a moment so that if you want to exchange something kind of like off recording, we can do that. I want to thank our panelists, Ashley Wright, Tim Spiegel, and Elana Sokol. You guys have been so fabulous kicking us off. And I also want to thank the people who helped me put this together. There's been a lot of work to do this. Amber Smith, Maria Senu, Sharice Cardenas, Jane Walker, Mercedes Elsop, and Jeff Zittimer. You've been so fabulous in helping us do this. And so please spread the word that we're going to continue to do this. Some of them are going to be panels like this. Some will be more of a one-on-one to really get deep into a person's experience, but please do keep following us. But now I'm going to stop recording. Thank you all very much.